Well, hi, George. Got your breath back from last night. It was all pretty hectic stuff, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, Johnny, and it was a marathon session of boxing. So I think I was working, and we were on air from 4 p.m. and then we didn't close out until the early hours. I think it finished. Was it 4 a.m. for the fighters out in Saudi Arabia local time? So great night of boxing, some big wins, and we're going to get onto it, but maybe a bit of balance restored with the main event.
Well, we'll talk about that more, in the time to come. But first of all, that win for AJ. It was one which he simply had to win for his career, didn't he? And to do it as spectacularly as he did, that must have been so much of a relief and so gratifying to him and his team. Yeah,
absolutely. Because for a multitude of reasons, John. Well, we're left scratching our heads as sort of ex-fighters and supposed to be experts now predicting outcomes before the fights are happening and made. And when Joshua Ngannou was made, you're thinking, right, we've seen this Ngannou guy. He gave Fury, in many people's eyes, the number one heavyweight in the world, all sorts of problems in their fight. Surely doesn't have a secret boxing talent that we are unaware of, and that's going to have a bearing on this fight? Or is it going to go to logic and that the guy who is the Olympic champion, or was the Olympic champion, a former unified heavyweight champion who's been boxing for an awful long time, knows how to box, will go out and do what we expect him to do, and he does. And as soon as he gets the measure of the chap in front of him, Ngannou lands a thunderous right hand, puts him over in the second, and then it's coming, but he does it in devastating fashion in the third round. And in many ways, and many hardcore boxing fans' eyes, boxing is restored. Our faith in boxing is restored, because we don't want that heat from these MMA guys saying they can show up and give us all a run for our money.
There's plenty of people who are going to be listening right now and say, oh, yes, you do.
Well, but obviously, they're two totally different sports. So, it was, even though Ngannou, you read his backstory, and, he's got an inspiring story, his life story, but in terms of his boxing, he's been in the boxing gyms before, apparently wanting to box, but there was no opportunities to. So, MMA presented itself, and he went for it. I don't watch a lot of the UFC, but he has a style, from what I've been told, that is more like of a boxer. So there are them, but before the fight, you're wondering, but really, truthfully, he didn't really stand a chance.
How much of a statement, though, bearing all that in mind, how much of a statement did AJ actually send to the rest? Because, of course, Tyson was sitting there at ringside. He'd see, as well as anybody, exactly what was produced. What sort of a message did he punch out with his fists?
Well, Joshua can whack, and the pressure's on. He's still in there with a relatively unknown guy, so it's hard to prepare for people like that. He knows that he's had his ups and downs throughout his career, and he's had to rebuild more than once. And now, if he had lost to Ngannou, what would be the rest of Joshua's career? I'm sure there would be loads of big fights, but would they be the fights that would really motivate him, ones that are essentially steer him towards becoming world champion again? Now, the Ngannou win doesn't necessarily help him in that regard, but the matter and the way that he did it, John, I think does. And when you compare, as I say, the fight that Ngannou had with Tyson Fury, who's sitting ringside, who had a life and death battle with him, you're like, why was it so difficult for you, Tyson? Even if you had a bad night at the office, like, you should have been able to cope with this chap in front of you who's essentially never boxed at a decent level before. So Joshua now, he's got a public opinion on his side, John, I think. And I think that goes a long way for those two boys. You're talking about Anthony Joshua, who's had the world at his feet, everyone on his side at large periods of his career, and Tyson Fury the same. And now Tyson Fury's in a situation where he's fighting Alexander Usyk, and there's a lot of people out there who are saying, I might be picking Usyk for this one. And now, after this weekend, there might be a lot of people out there who are actually going to pick Joshua in front of Fury. And how are these guys going to deal with that?
Well, let's just hear right now from Anthony Joshua's promoter, Eddie Hearn. and he gave his reaction to that spectacular second-round knockout win over Ngannou in this way.
Forget the rematch clauses. Fury Usyk's happening on May the 18th. Turki Al-Sheikh, His Excellency, delivers for the boxing world. The biggest fight, please, Tyson Fury beat Usyk. Because at the end of the day, this guy is a monster. A monster. Tyson Fury said to me in a week, I'll tell you something about Francis Ngannou. Oh, his chin. I hit him 4 or 5 times early in the first round. Flush, didn't even flinch. You see that tonight? That was an absolute abomination, if that is even a word. Because that is a monster. The #1 heavyweight in the world. He gets in the ring with Usyk like that. He gets in with a Fury like that. Everyone knows. He knocks out Tyson Fury. I've always believed it. Now, it's not even questionable. And like, he's the most humble guy you'll ever meet. I'm not. I've got the best heavyweight in the world, and his name is Anthony Joshua.
Eddie Hearn, not humble, you don't say. Yeah, but he's got to talk up his man, and he had every right to be ebullient afterwards, which of course he was. But when you look at the way in which Joshua came into this fight, and just how focused he was and how ready he seemed to be, you could see in his eyes when he stepped into the ring. It left me thinking, how much of an effect has Ben Davison had in training him? How much has he changed Joshua as a fighter? Is it psychologically? Has he done things technically? Because whatever he has done, he seems to be doing a very good job. Yeah,
he's doing a fantastic job with Joshua. We saw the Otto Wallin fight that he had with Ben Davison in his corner and Ben's team. I've never worked with Ben. I just know him as a sort of like through the boxing circle. So I'm not sure exactly how he operates, but from what I gather, they like attention to detail. And Joshua, again, I think he is that guy who likes that attention to detail. We saw in the build-up him talk about the way that they break down their opponents with video analysis and for Joshua, that's something that he's definitely bought into and subscribed to. I think he spent a long time working with Rob McCracken, who has had great success, but that relationship had run its course, and then he was looking to find another coach, and he probably, like a lot of British fighters, thinks, well, I've got to go and travel the States and find these big American names, to train with, when actually some of the best trainers, if not the best trainers at the moment, are in the UK. One of my former trainers, Shane McGuigan, he's got champion after champion, and Ben Davison producing champion after champion, working with a lot of obviously very talented fighters, but he's the sort of chap who can get the best out of them. And what he did with Tyson Fury should never, ever be underestimated, because, he took Tyson on when physically and indeed mentally he was a bit of a mess, didn't he? And he was a big part in turning him round. And I think all AJ fans will kind of be hoping that this could be a bit of a match made in heaven, and that they might prosper together in the months, years ahead, and this could be long term. Yeah, I think so. I can't see how this sort of relationship would break down. Obviously they do, and it can happen, and there could be a conflict, and maybe that that would be the only reason. But at the moment, they seem to be flying. I was sitting next to Fabio Wardley last night, another heavyweight who works with Ben Davison. So that's where you're sort of wondering, well, maybe there might be some sort of conflict later down the line if he's working with two fighters that essentially might fight each other. But back to Eddie Hearn's comments, where he says Anthony Joshua is the best heavyweight in the world, and he praised that Fury beats Usyk, and that there is no rematch, that a Joshua fight will trump it, and that we will see Joshua versus Tyson Fury. Now, I think everyone wants to see that fight, don't they, John? Everyone wants to see that fight. I think you'll see it anyway, though. Even if Usyk beats him, I think you'll still see it. Well, yeah, that's where I was almost going to get to, is that I don't think you can say Joshua is the best heavyweight in the world just because he's got 2 losses against Usyk, and he just looked great, but he just beat Ngannou, who is 0-1. Whereas Usyk's got so much technique. You can't say that he's in front of Usyk because Usyk's got those 2 wins over him. But that's a great point that you make, that if Usyk beats Fury, which a lot of people are saying, then rather than them going again, maybe they just go straight into the fight that the British fans certainly wanted to see and have wanted to see for a very, very long time, is Anthony Joshua versus Tyson Fury.